For 70 years, one company ruled the water. Yamaha, the name every fisherman trusted, the engine every captain depended on. Until now. Deep inside a factory in China, a team of engineers, trained by the same people who built Evinrude and Johnson, have created something that's shaking the entire marine industry to its core. An outboard motor that looks almost identical, costs 40% less, and it's forcing the world's largest engine maker to do something they've almost never done before: slash their prices. But here's what Yamaha doesn't want you to know. This isn't just about cheaper engines. This is about who controls the future of boating, and whether the brand you've trusted for decades can survive what's coming. Before we dive in, I need to ask you something. Drop your answer in the comments. Have you ever considered buying a Chinese outboard? Or would you never trust anything but the big names? I want to hear your honest opinion. Now, subscribe button and tap the bell icon. Because what I'm about to reveal could save you thousands of dollars on your next engine, or help you avoid the biggest mistake of your boating life. Let's get into it. How Yamaha built an industry. In 1955, in a small factory in Hamamatsu, Japan, a company known for building pianos and motorcycles decided to try something different. They built an outboard motor. It wasn't the most powerful. It wasn't the most innovative. But it worked. And it kept working, year after year, in conditions that destroyed lesser machines. That company was Yamaha. And that first engine was the beginning of something that would reshape the entire marine world. Over the next 7 decades, Yamaha didn't just sell outboard motors. They built an empire. By the time most of us were born, the name had become synonymous with reliability on the water. From bass fishing tournaments in Alabama to commercial trawlers in the South China Sea, Yamaha engines powered more boats than any other brand on Earth. The numbers tell the story. By 2025, Yamaha controlled 42% of global outboard motor production. Not sales, production. Nearly half of all the outboard engines built anywhere in the world. Tohatsu, their closest competitor, held just 16%. Mercury Marine, the American giant, trailed at 14.5%. This wasn't an accident. Yamaha earned that dominance through decades of engineering refinement, relentless quality control, and a global dealer network that stretched into almost every coastal town on the planet. When your engine failed 30 miles offshore, you wanted to know that a certified technician existed somewhere nearby. Yamaha made sure they did. And for that peace of mind, customers paid a premium. A new Yamaha F-115 4-stroke outboard carries a retail price of around $12,000 in the United States. Their flagship F-350 V6? Over $30,000. These aren't luxury goods for wealthy hobbyists. These are working tools for commercial fishermen, charter captains, and families who depend on getting home safely. But here's the part that most buyers never think about. Yamaha's business model wasn't just about selling engines. It was about locking customers into an ecosystem they couldn't easily leave. Consider Helm Master, Yamaha's proprietary digital control system. It offers joystick docking, autopilot integration, and set point station keeping. Impressive technology, but it only works with Yamaha engines. Once a boat builder installs Helm Master, switching to a competitor's outboard means ripping out the entire control system. The same goes for command link gauges, Y-COP security systems, and dozens of other Yamaha exclusive components. This strategy worked brilliantly for decades. Boat manufacturers partnered with Yamaha because dealers demanded it. Dealers stocked Yamaha because customers trusted it. And customers trusted Yamaha because everyone else did. The cycle fed itself. In 2023, Yamaha's Marine Products division generated 547 billion yen in revenue, roughly $3.5 billion US. Operating income hit 113 billion yen. Record numbers. The empire had never been stronger. But empires, as history reminds us, tend to grow complacent. They stop watching the horizon. They assume that what worked yesterday will work tomorrow, and sometimes while they're counting their profits. something emerges from a place they weren't looking. Something built by people who learned from them. Something designed not to defeat them head-on, but to undercut them where it hurts most, in the markets where price matters more than prestige. In the early 2000s, a small group of engineers gathered in Suzhou, China. They had worked with outboard technology for decades, some dating back to partnerships with American companies in the 1960s. They understood how these engines were designed, they knew what made them reliable, and they had a plan. The company was called Parson Power Machine. The year was 2001, and the founders were not amateurs. Among the engineering team were specialists who had worked with Outboard Marine Corporation, the American conglomerate that owned Evinrude and Johnson, as far back as 1968. These were men who had spent careers inside the Western outboard industry. They understood the technology intimately. They knew what worked, what failed, and why. And when they looked at the global marine market from their new factory in Suzhou, they saw something the established players had missed. They saw an opportunity. The core technology of a four-stroke outboard motor, the block, the crankshaft, the gear case, the cooling system, hadn't fundamentally changed in decades. What Yamaha and Mercury had perfected through years of iteration could now be replicated using modern computer-aided design and precision CNC machining. The engineering wasn't magic. It was metallurgy, tolerances, and discipline. Parsun's strategy was straightforward. Build engines based on proven architectures, use manufacturing processes that matched international standards. Price them for markets where Yamaha's premium was a barrier, not a badge of honor. And critically, design parts to be compatible with existing Japanese components, so that a water pump impeller from a Parson could fit a Yamaha block, and vice versa. By 2006, Parsun was mass-producing two-stroke and four-stroke outboards, ranging from 2.5 to 60 horsepower. They earned EPA certification for the United States market. They secured CE certification for Europe. They achieved ISO 9001 quality certification. These weren't backyard counterfeiters. This was industrial-scale manufacturing with international legitimacy. But Parsun wasn't alone for long. In 2008, a second challenger emerged from Hangzhou, 200 kilometers to the south. Hidea Power Machinery entered the market with ambition that matched its investment. They constructed what company literature described as the most advanced outboard production line in China's marine industry. An automated facility with robotic assembly, Hyundai machining centers, and annual capacity exceeding 100,000 units. Hidea moved fast. They developed their own anti-corrosion coating systems. They built a parts manufacturing base covering 10,000 square meters in Zhejiang province. They even created something no one else had attempted, a natural gas-powered outboard motor, which they began exporting to the United States as an alternative fuel option. By 2024, Hidea was selling engines in over 120 countries, and they announced something that should have sent a chill through every boardroom in Japan and Wisconsin, a new engine platform covering 100 to 130 horsepower. This mattered enormously. For years, Chinese manufacturers had been confined to the small engine segment, motors under 60 horsepower, suitable for tenders, dinghies, and small fishing boats. The profitable center of the market, the 75 to 150 horsepower range that powers center console fishing boats, commercial workboats, and water taxis, remained firmly in Japanese and American hands. Not anymore. And then there was the price. In Australia, where both brands compete directly, the gap is stark. A Parsun 9.8 horsepower two-stroke sells for approximately 1,695 Australian dollars. The comparable Yamaha 9.9 horsepower, 2,425. That's a 30% difference on a small motor. Scale that gap to a 115 horsepower commercial engine, and you're talking thousands of dollars. For a recreational boater in Sydney, that savings might fund a new fish finder. But for a commercial fisherman in Indonesia or the Philippines, working 300 days a year on razor-thin margins, that difference determines whether he can afford an engine at all. The Chinese weren't trying to win in wealthy markets. They were building loyalty in places where loyalty had never been offered. For years, the established brands could afford to ignore what was happening in Suzhou and Hangzhou. Their core customers, American recreational boaters, European yacht owners, Australian sport fishermen, weren't browsing Alibaba for discount engines. They walked into certified dealerships, paid the premium, and slept well knowing their investment was backed by a global service network. But markets change, and by the early 2020s, the geography of outboard demand was shifting beneath Yamaha's feet. The fastest-growing segments weren't in Florida or Queensland. They were in Indonesia, India, Brazil, and the Philippines. These weren't luxury buyers seeking the finest marine technology. They were working people, commercial fishermen, tour boat operators, small-scale transport captains, who needed engines that ran reliably and cost as little as possible. In these markets, a 30% price gap wasn't a minor consideration. It was everything. Parsun and Hidea understood this. While Yamaha focused on high-margin sales in developed economies, the Chinese manufacturers built distribution networks across Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. They offered warranties. They trained local mechanics. They shipped parts in quantities that made repairs affordable. Slowly, steadily, they took market share, and eventually, the numbers became impossible to ignore. In fiscal year 2024, Yamaha's Marine Products division reported revenues of 537.7 billion yen, a decline of 1.8% from the previous year. That alone might seem modest. But operating income told a more troubling story. 87.8 billion yen, down 15.7% from the year before. In their official earnings statement, Yamaha's leadership acknowledged the pressure directly. They cited worsening market conditions and noted that competitors had improved their product supply operations, intensifying competition. The corporate language was careful, but the meaning was clear. Someone was eating into their margins, and it wasn't Mercury or Suzuki. Yamaha's response came on multiple fronts. First, promotional warfare. In early 2025, the company launched an aggressive campaign called New Year, New Reliability. Buyers of high horsepower models received extended warranties stretching to 7 years. Smaller engines came with dealer credits worth hundreds of dollars. The message was unmistakable. We're willing to sacrifice short-term profit to keep you in the Yamaha family. Second, vertical integration. In October 2024, Yamaha announced its intention to acquire Telwater, Australia's largest manufacturer of aluminum trailer boats. The brands included household names like Quintrex, Stacer, and Yellowfin. The strategy was elegant. Bundle Yamaha engines with Telwater boats at the factory level, creating package deals that standalone Chinese engines manufacturers couldn't match. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission took notice. In their preliminary review, regulators expressed concern that Yamaha might use its dominant position in outboard motors to pressure Telwater boat dealers into exclusive arrangements. The investigation continues. Third, and most quietly, price adjustments in overseas markets. While retail prices in the United States have remained largely stable, industry sources in Southeast Asia and South America report that Yamaha has modified distributor pricing in regions where Chinese competition is fiercest. The premium still exists, but it has narrowed. And then there's the dealer network. Multiple reports from Australia and Europe describe Yamaha tightening its grip on distribution channels. Dealership contracts were reportedly rewritten to discourage or prohibit carrying competing brands. Dealers who stocked Parsun or Hidea risked losing favorable pricing on Yamaha inventory, or losing access entirely. One Australian Parsoon distributor described the situation bluntly. The major brands had implemented what amounted to an industry-wide ban on Chinese alternatives. Survival meant choosing sides. The empire was fighting back. But defense, as military strategists know, is rarely a path to victory. Step back from the corporate maneuvering for a moment. Forget the brand names and the quarterly earnings reports. Ask a simpler question. What does it actually take to build a reliable outboard motor? The answer, uncomfortable as it may be for premium manufacturers, is that the core technology has become remarkably standardized. A 4-stroke outboard engine is fundamentally an internal combustion motor mated to a lower unit gear case with a water cooling system. The principles haven't changed since the 1980s. What separates a good engine from a bad one isn't secret knowledge locked in a Japanese vault. It's precision manufacturing, quality materials, and rigorous assembly discipline. For decades, achieving that precision required equipment and expertise concentrated in a handful of countries. Japanese and American factories had the tooling, the trained workforce, and the institutional knowledge accumulated over generations. Chinese manufacturers had ambition, but lacked capability. That gap has closed. Modern CNC machining centers, the same ones used in Japanese factories, are now standard equipment in Chinese production facilities. Computer-aided design software allows engineers anywhere to model components to tolerances measured in microns. Quality certifications like ISO 9001 impose standardized processes regardless of geography. The marine industry is experiencing what the automotive industry faced 2 decades ago. When Korean automakers first entered Western markets, critics dismissed them as cheap imitations. Today, Hyundai and Kia compete directly with Toyota and Honda on quality, not just price. The same trajectory is underway on the water. This matters enormously because of where global demand is heading. The United States and Europe still account for roughly 75% of worldwide outboard revenue. But revenue follows wealthy buyers purchasing expensive engines. Unit volume tells a different story. The fastest-growing markets for outboard motors are Indonesia, India, Brazil, Vietnam, and the Philippines, countries with vast coastlines, growing economies, and millions of people who depend on small boats for their livelihoods. In these markets, a $12,000 Yamaha isn't an option. It represents years of income. The choice isn't between Yamaha and Parsoon. The choice is between Parsoon and no engine at all. Chinese manufacturers understood this arithmetic before anyone else. While established brands chased high-margin sales in Miami and Monaco, Parsoon and Hidea built relationships with distributors in Mindanao, Mombasa, and Manaus. They trained local mechanics. They stocked affordable parts. They earned trust the only way trust is earned, by showing up consistently, year after year. And here's what the premium brands failed to anticipate: loyalty transfers across generations. When a young fisherman in Cebu grows up watching his father maintain a Chinese engine that never failed, he doesn't dream of owning a Yamaha. He dreams of owning a bigger Parsoon. Brand preference isn't genetic, it's learned. And it's being learned right now in markets that will dominate global boat sales within a generation. The high-horsepower segment represents the final frontier. For years, Chinese manufacturers were limited to engines below 60 horsepower, suitable for tenders and small fishing boats, but not for serious commercial or recreational use. That limitation preserved the profitable core of the market for Japanese and American companies. But Hidea's announcement of a 100 to 130 horsepower platform changes the calculation. Parsoon's new 115 horsepower 4-stroke does the same. These engines power center console boats, water taxis, and commercial workboats. If Chinese manufacturers can deliver competitive quality at their traditional price points, the pressure on established brands will intensify dramatically. The question is no longer, whether Chinese outboards will improve. They already have. The question is whether Yamaha can find new ground to defend. If you want to understand where the established brands believe their salvation lies, watch what they're building. At the Consumer Electronics Show in January 2023, Mercury Marine unveiled the Avator 7.5e, their first fully electric outboard motor. Yamaha followed with the Harmo, a 48-volt electric propulsion system designed for quiet, zero-emission operation. Tohatsu partnered with Ilmor Marine to develop a 6-kilowatt electric motor for the North American and European markets. The message from the legacy manufacturers is consistent. The future is electric, and electric is where we win. The logic seems sound. Battery technology, digital integration, proprietary software, and charging infrastructure. These are areas where intellectual property still creates barriers. Unlike a 4-stroke combustion engine, which can be reverse-engineered by any competent machine shop, an advanced battery management system requires years of research and development. Electric propulsion, the thinking goes, will reset the playing field. But there's a problem with that theory. The Chinese are already there. Parsun announced 2 new electric outboard models in 2024. E-Propulsion, a Chinese company founded in 2012, has become a global leader in small electric marine motors, winning design awards and building distribution networks across Europe and North America. Their products aren't cheap imitations, they're genuine innovations, developed by engineers who understand that the future floats on lithium, not gasoline. Even Torqeedo, the German company widely considered the pioneer of electric marine propulsion, operates within supply chains deeply connected to Asian manufacturing. When Yamaha acquired Torqeedo, they didn't acquire independence from Chinese industry. They acquired deeper entanglement with it. The uncomfortable truth is that China dominates global battery production. The country manufactures over 70% of the world's lithium-ion cells. Any company building electric outboards at scale will depend on Chinese suppliers for their most critical component. The escape route may lead back to the same competitive landscape. What then do the established brands still have that Chinese manufacturers lack? Infrastructure. Yamaha, Mercury, Suzuki, and Honda have spent decades building global networks of certified dealers and trained technicians. When your engine fails in a remote Alaskan harbor or a coastal Australian town, finding someone qualified to repair a Yamaha is far easier than finding someone who understands a Parsun. This advantage is real. Forum posts from boaters who purchased Chinese engines frequently cite the same frustration. The motor was affordable, but when something broke, parts were unavailable and local mechanics refused to touch it. For buyers who prioritize long-term support over upfront savings, the premium brands still offer genuine value. But infrastructure follows volume. As Chinese market share grows, so will their service networks. Dealers who once dismissed Parsun are reconsidering as customer inquiries increase. Mechanics who refuse to learn Chinese engine platforms are discovering that stubbornness doesn't pay the bills. The transformation won't happen overnight, but it will happen. So where does this leave you, the person watching this video, trying to decide what powers your next boat? If you operate in wealthy markets with established dealer networks and you value resale value and comprehensive support, the premium brands remain a rational choice. But if you're willing to learn your own maintenance, or you operate in regions where Chinese distribution is strong, or you simply believe that competition produces better products for everyone, the alternatives deserve serious consideration. Yamaha isn't cutting prices overseas because they want to. They're doing it because the world changed while they weren't watching. The water doesn't care what flag flies over the factory that built your engine. It only cares whether you make it home. And increasingly, there's more than one way to get there.